The air inside the alien ruin was heavy and cold. Dust floated in thin beams of light that came through cracks in the broken ceiling. Every sound echoed, making it hard to tell how close danger was. Jack moved carefully, his boots silent on the cracked stone floor. Lyra followed close behind, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her long silver hair brushing her face. They both knew they were not alone. They had entered the ruins to find an ancient map. It was supposed to lead to a safe route out of enemy territory, but now every step felt like a trap waiting to happen. Jack had been a soldier for years, but he had never been this deep in alien lands. Lyra's people had built these halls long before the war. She knew some of the old ways, but much had been forgotten. That made this place even more dangerous. "Stay close," Jack whispered. His voice was low, steady. Lyra nodded. But her eyes kept darting around. The carvings on the walls seemed to watch them. Ancient symbols warned of danger, but she could not remember their meaning. The silence was so deep it almost hurt. Only the faint sound of dripping water broke it. They reached a wide chamber. Pillars rose high, cracked and leaning. The floor was covered with uneven stone tiles. Some looked newer, some older. Jack stopped and raised a hand. "This is wrong," he murmured. But before he could say more, Lyra stepped forward. Her foot pressed down on a dull red tile. The sound was like metal screaming. A hidden panel in the wall slid open with sudden force. A spear-like blade shot out faster than her eyes could follow. Lyra froze. Knowing it was aimed straight for her chest, she had no time to scream, but Jack moved before he even thought. He threw himself in front of her. The blade slammed into his shoulder and tore across his chest. The impact knocked him back into her. They hit the floor hard. Lyra stared at him in shock, blood already spreading across his shirt. She had never seen anyone take a hit for her. Not in her world, not in this war. Jack gritted his teeth and pushed himself up. "Get up. We have to move," he said, his voice rough. Lyra's hands shook. As she tried to help him, "You're bleeding, not the time," he cut her off. The trap reset with a slow grinding noise. They could hear it sliding back into place. That meant it could fire again. Jack leaned on her shoulder, forcing himself forward. The corridor ahead was narrow and dark. Every step made the pain worse, but he didn't slow down. Lyra kept looking at him, confusion and guilt in her eyes. Her people had always taught her that humans were weak, disposable, but here was one who had just taken a weapon for her. Why? They moved deeper into the ruin. The air grew colder. Far away, voices echoed, sharp. Harsh enemy patrols. Lyra's chest tightened. If they caught Jack in his condition, he would not survive. She took his arm and guided him toward a side passage. Her mind racing, they reached another chamber, smaller but no safer. Strange crystal lights glowed faintly on the walls. The floor was littered with debris. Jack leaned against a pillar. Breathing hard, Lyra knelt beside him, tearing a strip of cloth from her robe to press against his wound. He hissed in pain but didn't push her away. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. Jack gave her a faint smile. "Didn't think about it," he said, her hands stilled. She could not understand how someone could risk themselves without even thinking. In her world, no one would. The sound of footsteps drew closer. Jack straightened, despite the pain. "We keep moving," he said. Lyra nodded. Helping him to his feet, every shadow seemed alive, every sound a threat. Somewhere ahead, there was an exit, but between them and freedom, there could be more traps, and the enemy was closing in. As they stepped into the next corridor, Jack glanced at her. "Watch the ground this time," he murmured. Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. She had no idea how they would make it out, but for the first time in her life, she wanted to protect someone else as fiercely as he had protected her. The air felt heavier with every step they took. the walls closing in as if the ruin itself wanted to trap them. Jack's weight leaned more on Lyra now, his blood leaving dark trails on the cracked floor. The echo of enemy voices was louder, their language sharp and fast. Lyra couldn't understand every word, but she knew enough to realize they were talking about blocking the exits. Her eyes scanned the corridor ahead, searching for anything that looked like a way out. A faint draft touched her face from the left, a sign of an opening. She tugged Jack toward it, but the moment they turned the corner, she froze. The path was blocked by a collapse of stone and metal, huge slabs stacked like the bones of some dead giant. Jack leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his skin pale under the dim light. "You can fit through there," he said, pointing at a narrow gap between two slabs. "Go, I'll hold them off." Lyra shook her head, her voice sharper. "Then she meant, I'm not leaving you." They stared at each other for a moment, the air between them thick with things neither could say. Jack's eyes were calm despite the pain, but Lyra could see the tension in his jaw. He wasn't afraid for himself, he was afraid for her. She didn't understand why that made her chest ache. The sound of boots was close now, metal scraping stone as the patrol drew near. Lyra's hands moved before she thought, gripping the edge of a broken beam and pushing with all her strength. The rubble shifted slightly, but not enough. Dust rained down, and one sharp edge cut her palm. Blood dripping onto the stone. Jack tried to help, but every pull sent fire through his chest. His breath came ragged. "Lyra, listen to me," he said. "If they catch you, they'll kill you slow." She glared at him, her voice low and shaking. "If they catch you, they'll kill you right here." And she pushed harder, with a deep crack. One of the slabs shifted enough for a thin passage to open. It was still too small for Jack to pass without effort, but it was something. Lyra slipped through first, her hand reaching back for him. "Come on," she urged. Jack hesitated, glancing back down the corridor where shadows moved, then forced himself through, the stone scraping his shoulders. They stumbled into a small, dark chamber. On the other side, the walls here were smoother, the air damp. A faint light glowed from moss on the ceiling, casting everything in a green haze. It smelled of earth and old water. Lyra pressed him against the wall and checked the cloth she had tied around his wound. It was soaked through, the red almost black in the dim light. Her throat tightened. "We need to stop the bleeding," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "We need distance first." A low sound came from behind them, a faint mechanical hum. Lyra's eyes widened. Not another trap, she breathed. They turned slowly, and in the far wall, something shifted. A panel opened, revealing a device with small, moving arms. It didn't look like a weapon, but the hum grew louder, and the light from its center turned red. Jack stepped in front of her without thinking. "Even now, move," she said, trying to push past him, but he stayed in place. The device released a cloud of shimmering dust that floated toward them. It wasn't smoke. It moved like it was alive, swirling and curling. Lyra held her breath, grabbing Jack's arm, pulling him toward another crack in the wall. They squeezed through just as the dust touched the spot where they had stood the moment it made contact with the floor. It turned the stone black and crumbled it into ash. Lyra's stomach twisted. If they had been even a second slower, they would have been gone on the other side. The corridor opened into a sloping tunnel. Jack's steps were slower now, each one a fight. Lyra could hear the enemy voices again. But this time, from two directions, they were being surrounded. She clenched her fists, her mind racing for a way to keep them ahead. For the first time, she realized that the only way they might survive was if she learned to protect him the same way he had protected her. The tunnel ahead twisted like a serpent, the walls wet and cold under Lyra's hands as she guided Jack forward. Every step echoed, and somewhere behind them, the enemy's shouts grew louder. They were hunting them with purpose now. No more random patrols. They knew exactly who they were chasing. Jack's breathing was uneven, a harsh rasp that made Lyra glance at him every few seconds. His wound had soaked through another strip of cloth, and she could feel his weight pulling harder on her arm. "You're slowing down," she said, in a low voice. "I'm fine," he answered, but his pale face told her otherwise. They reached a fork in the tunnel. One path was lit faintly by daylight, the other swallowed by complete darkness. Jack started toward the light, but Lyra pulled him back. Her voice was tense. "The light means they want us to go that way." Jack paused, then nodded, letting her lead into the black corridor. The air was colder here, and the ground uneven. Twice Jack stumbled, and each time Lyra caught him before he could fall. Her mind was full of questions she had no time to ask. Why did he keep risking himself for her? Why did it matter to him whether she lived or died? A sharp sound ahead made her freeze. It wasn't footsteps, it was metal sliding on stone. She reached into the small pouch on her belt and took out a piece of polished crystal. She held it low, letting its faint glow reveal the floor. Her heart stopped. The path ahead was covered in thin wire, nearly invisible, stretching across at ankle height. "Tripwire," Jack muttered. He crouched, wincing in pain, and examined the nearest strand. "This is no alarm," he said. "This will trigger something bad." Lyra's throat was dry. She stepped carefully, moving around the wires. Jack followed slower, his boot brushing one of the strands. A deep, grinding noise rolled through the tunnel. The ceiling above shifted, and heavy stone blocks began to drop from hidden slots. Lyra didn't think. She grabbed Jack's arm and pulled with all her strength. The stones crashed down where they had been seconds before, the sound shaking the walls. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe. They staggered forward, coughing. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber with a pool of still water in the center. The surface reflected the pale light from cracks above. For a moment, it was almost calm. Jack sat heavily against the wall, his head back. "We can rest here for a minute," he said. Lyra scanned the shadows, her ears catching something, a faint ripple in the water. She moved closer to the edge, frowning. The ripple grew larger, and then the surface broke. A long, dark shape slid under the water, smooth and silent. Lyra's breath caught. "We're not alone," she whispered. Jack's eyes snapped open, his hand going to the small knife at his belt. The shape moved faster now, circling the pool. Without warning, it lunged from the water, a creature with slick black skin and rows of needle-like teeth. Lyra stumbled back. Jack pushed himself forward despite his wound, slashing at it as it came close. The blade cut shallow into its side, and the creature hissed, retreating into the water. They didn't wait for it to come again. Lyra hauled Jack to his feet, and they moved toward a small opening at the far side of the chamber. The sound of splashing followed them, but the creature didn't leave the pool. As they entered the narrow passage, Lyra glanced back once. Her reflection wavered on the water's surface, but beside it, two glowing eyes watched. Her unblinking, she turned away quickly, her grip on Jack's arm tightening. The enemy was behind them. The creature was in front somewhere, and Jack's strength was fading. She knew they were running out of time. The passage sloped upward, the air growing warmer and filled with the scent of soil. Ahead, a faint glow of natural light pulled them forward. Lyra could feel Jack's steps dragging more now, his weight almost too much for her to carry. But she refused to slow. If they stopped, the enemy would be on them within minutes. They emerged from the tunnel into a forest unlike anything Jack had seen before. The trees rose like towers, their bark smooth and silver, leaves shaped like thin blades that whispered when the wind passed through. Strange glowing insects drifted in the air, casting pale green light over the roots and ferns below. Jack leaned against a tree, his breathing heavy. "We can lose them in here," he said. Lyra looked back at the tunnel entrance already. Faint shadows moved inside. The enemy was coming. She grabbed Jack's arm, pulling him deeper into the forest. The ground was soft, covered in a carpet of blue moss that muffled their steps. But the forest was alive with sounds, low growls in the distance, the faint crunch of unseen feet following them. Lyra's eyes scanned the trees, searching for a safe path. She remembered old stories from her childhood about hunters who vanished in these woods, and the thought made her grip Jack tighter. They reached a cluster of massive roots twisting up from the ground like the ribs of a giant beast. Lyra guided Jack into the hollow space between them, pressing a finger to her lips. Voices drifted through the air, alien speech. Closer than she expected, one of the pursuers stepped into view, a tall figure with armor that shimmered in the dim light. His weapons scanned the ground, searching for footprints. Jack's hand went to the knife at his belt, but Lyra caught his wrist, shaking her head, her other hand pointed upward. A pale creature, no bigger than a dog, moved silently along the roots above the soldier. Its body was almost transparent, and when it dropped onto the man, its long claws sliced deep into his armor. He fell without a sound, pulled into the shadows by the predator. Jack's eyes widened, and Lyra mouthed, "Not just them hunting us." She waited until the forest went quiet again before leading him out of the hollow. They moved quickly now, weaving between the trees, careful not to draw attention from either the enemy or the hidden creatures. The light in the forest shifted as thick clouds rolled overhead. The glowing insects vanished into the bark, and the shadows deepened. Lyra knew what that meant. Night was coming, and in this place, night belonged to the hunters. A sudden snap of a branch made them both turn. In the distance, a pair of bright, unblinking eyes stared from the undergrowth. Then another set appeared. Beside it, and another. The creatures moved slowly, circling. Jack tightened his grip on his knife, but his injured arm trembled. Lyra's mind raced. She spotted a fallen tree ahead, its hollow trunk big enough for them to crawl inside. She pulled Jack toward it, the eyes following. Their movements were silent, predatory. The moment they slid into the hollow, the creature stopped at the edge of the clearing. Watching, Jack leaned against the damp wood, his voice low. "Why aren't they coming closer?" Lyra swallowed. "They're waiting." The words hung heavy in the darkness. Outside, the eyes didn't blink, didn't move. They were patient because they knew their prey was trapped. The forest was silent except for Jack's uneven breathing. The glow from the insects never returned, leaving only the faint silver light from the moon breaking through the canopy. Lyra kept her eyes on the unmoving shapes outside the hollow. Log, their glowing eyes still fixed on them. She knew those creatures would not leave until they got what they wanted. She looked at Jack, his skin pale, lips dry. The cloth on his wound was soaked through again. Each breath seemed to take more effort than the last. If she didn't find something to stop the bleeding soon, he would not survive the night. She remembered the stories her grandmother told. Deep in this forest grew the heartleaf plant. Its red sap able to close wounds faster than any medicine, but heartleaf only grew in the lair of the shadow claw. A predator feared even by the hunters of her people. Lyra made a choice. She leaned close to Jack, whispering, "Stay here. Don't move. No matter what you hear." His eyes opened weakly. "Where are you going?" She didn't answer. She couldn't, because if she said the words out loud, it would sound like a death sentence. She slid silently out of the hollow, keeping to the shadows. The creatures with glowing eyes shifted as she passed, but didn't follow. They were more interested in the wounded man, easier prey. The thought made her move faster, weaving through twisted roots and tall ferns. The forest grew denser, the air colder. She heard the distant sound of water dripping. And then she saw it, a patch of faint red light glowing against the base of a massive tree. The heartleaf plant. Its leaves were black as night, but the veins glowed like fire. Lyra knelt and reached for it. But a low growl froze her in place. From the darkness above, two curved claws slid into view, gripping the tree trunk. The shadow claw's head followed, eyes like shards of ice. It moved slowly, confident. Knowing it had the advantage, her heart pounded. She kept her movements small, fingers brushing the leaf. The shadow claw's head tilted, studying her. Its body was long and covered in scales that seemed to melt into the shadows. Then it moved, fast as lightning. Dropping toward her, Lyra rolled aside, snatching the heartleaf in one motion. The predator landed where she had been, claws digging deep into the earth. She didn't wait to see if it followed. She ran, the glowing veins of the plant lighting her way back. Branches whipped her face. Roots caught her feet. But she didn't stop. Behind her, she could hear the shadow claw's claws scraping stone. It was chasing her now, and it was faster. The hollow log was ahead. She could see Jack's pale face in the shadows. She dove inside just as the shadow claw burst into the clearing. Its claws raked the outside of the log, sending splinters flying. Lyra pressed her back to Jack, holding the plant close, the creature's head shoved into the opening, teeth snapping inches from her face. Jack, despite his pain, grabbed a broken branch and rammed it into the creature's jaw. It recoiled with a hiss, then vanished into the darkness. Lyra didn't waste a second. She crushed the heartleaf. The red sap sticky and warm, pressing it firmly onto Jack's wound. He winced, then let out a slow breath, already some color returning to his face. Lyra met his eyes, her own shaking. "You're not dying here," she said quietly, "outside." The glowing eyes of the other hunters still waited. But now there was something new in Lyra's chest, a cold, determined fire. The forest grew darker as night deepened. Shadows swallowed the path, and the faint sounds of the enemy grew louder. Jack steadied himself against a broad tree, his breath shallow but steady. Lyra looked around, her eyes sharp, heart pounding. She knew they didn't have much time before the hunters closed in. Suddenly, voices broke the silence, rough and angry. Figures moved through the underbrush, weapons ready. Jack tightened his grip on the small energy blade at his side. Lyra handed him the only weapon they had left, her fingers trembling. "We fight here," she said, voice low but fierce. The hunters emerged into the clearing. Their armor scratched and dirty. They had the look of men who had hunted far and lost much. One shouted an order, and they spread out, encircling Jack and Lyra. Jack's eyes met Lyra's. A silent promise passed between them. Without hesitation, Jack stepped forward. Despite the pain stabbing through his chest, his blade flashed in. The moonlight, as he parried the first attack, Lyra stayed close, using quick, sharp strikes to fend off attackers. They moved like a single force, desperate and fierce. The fight was brutal. Jack taking hits but refusing to fall. Each time an enemy swung at Lyra, Jack intercepted. Blood mixed with dirt and sweat, but neither gave ground. Lyra saw a chance and lunged, disarming one hunter. The enemy faltered, surprised by their determination, but reinforcements appeared, and the numbers tipped against them. Jack pushed Lyra behind a rock, signaling her to run. "No," she said firmly. "I'm staying," in a moment of fierce courage. Lyra stepped into the open. Her voice rang out, challenging the hunters. Jack's heart clenched, but he saw the fire in her eyes. They were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to live. The hunters hesitated, caught off guard by her boldness. Jack seized the moment. Charging through their ranks, his strength fading, he fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Lyra followed, together breaking through the circle. They ran into the night, wounds and weariness slowing them, but behind them, the hunters. Shouts faded, lost in the forest's depths. Jack collapsed beneath a tree, the pain overwhelming. Lyra knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she held him close. Was it worth it? She whispered, tears streaking her face. Jack smiled weakly. Every pain, every moment, he said. Her heart swelled, knowing that no matter what came next, they would face it together, stronger than before. The forest was quiet now. The moonlight, filtering softly through the leaves, Lyra held Jack close. Feeling the weak beat of his heart against her palm, his breath was shallow, eyes half closed, but still he smiled at her. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you," he whispered, voice low and rough. Lyra shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You saved me," she said. "More than once, more than you know." She looked around, the danger fading. But not gone. The path ahead was uncertain, but she no longer feared it alone. Jack's pain was heavy, but his spirit burned bright. He had given everything to protect her, his body. His hope, his life. Lyra pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. "We will survive this," she promised. Her hand brushed a stray lock of silver hair from his face. He squeezed her hand weakly. "It was worth every pain," he repeated. A soft smile played on his lips as his eyes finally closed. For a moment, Lyra thought he was gone. But then his fingers twitched, and a faint warmth returned. Hope stirred inside her chest like a fragile flame. She knew their fight was not over. But together, they could face whatever came. The stars above twinkled like distant watchers, silent. An endless Lyra rose slowly, carrying Jack as best she could. Every step was heavy. But her heart was light, because in that moment she understood he was no longer just a human to her. He was her shield, her friend, her reason to keep fighting. And no trap, no enemy, no pain could ever change that.